Hi, I'm Travis, and this is Handcrafted Overlanding. In this project, I'm going to be installing a dual-band amateur radio in the pickup truck. Before I go any further, I want to give a good shout out to my friend Trevor, who, without him, I'd probably be sitting around doing nothing for this video, so that wouldn't be very exciting. So, thanks, Trevor. So, your first question is what's an amateur radio? Well, amateur radios are a classification in our radio frequency spectrum that you must be licensed for in order to use to communicate with them. Your first question would be like, well, isn't that like a CB that you hear out of truck drivers? The answer is no. Those are two different frequencies. I'm not going to get into the real technical details because that's not what this video is about, but in a nutshell, in order to use a CB, you don't have to be licensed. You might think to yourself, well, why bother with an amateur radio if you don't need to be licensed to be with a CB? Well, the reason is, in a CB world, your range isn't nearly as what it is with an amateur radio. The reason that is they limit the amount of wattage that the unit can produce. I want to say for CB, it's something around, I want to say 2 watts. I think it might be 4 watts. The sideband, which uses a whole different technology in that same spectrum, I think is 12 watts. I'll put all the information down below. But in a nutshell, the range that you're going to get out of a standard CB vehicle mount is maybe 10 miles. You might be thinking to yourself, well, Trav, that's pretty good distance. You're never really more than 10 miles away from civilization, and you might be right there. But the problem is when you're out in the middle of the trees and you're out in the middle of everything, that 10 miles gets really short really quick, because the more objects that are in your line of sight to get to the next hop for your communication shortens your distance. So, you heard me talking about wattage over there. You might think, well, okay, Travis, why not just use a handheld? I've seen you drive around with one of those before. Yeah, I got a cheap little handheld guy. It's not bad, it's not great. This little handheld guy, because of its size, is 8 watts max. It's also not really licensed under FCC Part 92, so I wouldn't recommend buying one. I happen to find one and procure one, and I don't use it that often. So if that's up to 8 watts, well, I think that was 5 watts, but if they're up to 8 watts in a handheld unit, well, this has got to be a lot bigger, right? Well, you're right. So this, depending on the frequency, and Trevor, I'm sorry if I'm butchering some of this, I'm doing my best. He is an RF engineer. Dude is brilliant. Anyways, depending on the frequency, we'll do up to 50 watts. And you're like, Trav, it's not that much more. So how much further do we get? Well, in line of sight, and I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong, this could do up to 100 miles. It's kind of cool, right? Like, okay, well, why don't you just buy that? Well, there's pros and cons to all of this. CB, not very expensive. Especially if you're doing a vehicle mount unit, everybody kind of, well, not everybody, but there's a lot of manufacturers who make inexpensive models. I don't know if all of you remember, but I know when I was younger, I thought the coolest thing was to have a Cobra CB. I really wanted one, and then I realized, no, I don't really want one. They're cool, don't get me wrong, they're very nostalgic for me, but I ended up with some other model in the GMC. So in the GMC, I ran a CB in there, and Damien has CB mounted in his truck as well. You might be wondering, Trav, why don't you just yank that CB out and install it into the Squirrely Ram? Well, that's because I'm offered a clean slate in the Squirrely Ram, and between me installing the CB into the GMC and this project, I actually went and got licensed, and I think the cost was $35 to go take the test for the tech license. It's not terribly difficult, but it's not terribly easy at the same time. So that's another kind of downfall when it comes to the realm of amateur radios. Also part of that is the cost of the unit. So the little handheld unit that I had is, I procured it for about $30. Not a bad price. But technically you're not allowed to legally operate it until you're licensed. So that kind of ties into there. The CB, on the other hand, was like $150 plus the antenna plus the wiring. So I'll say like $225 for the whole setup. And it's not a bad price. You might be thinking, well, Trav, that's not a bad price. What about this guy? Well, this guy is a Kenwood TM-d700. This guy used goes for about $400 on eBay. Its successor, the TMD710, goes for about $700. Now there's other brands out there that you can go take a look at and find them a little bit cheaper, a little bit more expensive. There's a range, but good quality hardware is kind of hard to find. Let me bring you in closer to this guy. So here's the head unit on the TMD700. Now, earlier I said this is a dual band unit. You might be wondering, well, Travis, what does dual band unit mean? Well, this means in the realm of frequencies of which that we can process, this unit can process at 146.52 megahertz and 446 megahertz. Now, there's a lot of other parts about it, and then of course you got an antenna that you have to match and pair with that. So things get a little bit technical when you get to that point. You can buy probably whole kits for this sort of thing, but that's not where I came from. So that's what dual band means. You might be wondering, so it's more expensive, you have to be licensed, sure you get better range, but what other sorts of benefits does this have? Well, one awesome benefit is there's a lot of amateur radio enthusiasts out there. They will build things that are called repeater systems. Basically, you send your broadcast, it goes to the repeater, it then retransmits it on another frequency out and about. They can be complicated. They can have multiple towers linked throughout an entire environment. They can have a single one. You can even link them into the internet, broadcast across the internet and out to a tower on the, I don't know, East Coast, whatever. The networks are pretty big, and it's something that I've never really understood. Well, I never really got into. And as I started moving more and more into this, it's awesome. I think it's really cool. There's also one other feature that I kind of really like about this, and it's called APRS. APRS is Automatic Packet Reporting System, and it's a certain frequency in the environment that the radio or a piece of equipment can send a signal and relate to, what was it? You can send a signal and it'll relate to a bunch of information. You can send weather information, you can send GPS location, you can send hello text messages too. It just depends on how you have how the system is set up and how it's going to receive these messages. Now the big part about that I just said is the GPS location, because unlike my sat messenger that I carry with me, which I will still carry on with me, that actually charges me money as it does waypoints and locations as we go through on camping trips. More camping trips are going to be coming. The weather's gotten better. Life has gotten a little less crazy. So yes, camping trips are coming. This can send my location out at a faster rate, logged basically for free, and available to anyone who may be able in range to help me if I get in trouble. So that's actually one of the big things that I like about this unit. Also, you've noticed they got this little tiny head unit and this big old block here. So under the in the GMC, I have a big CB unit, and that big CB unit is stuffed into the dash. It's literally just stuffed in there. I pulled out the 6-disc CD changer and it fit, and I thought it was pretty cool. But it's stuffed in there. It's big room. Now, I don't have that room luxury in the Squirrely Ram, so a smaller profile head is going to do wonders for me. Like, I can take this plate and mount it on the underside, underneath my HVAC controls, or my my trailer controls, and I can actually look at it. It'll be down low and it's gonna be out of the way. That's one other feature that I like about this. So why am I bothering telling you all this? What does it matter, huh? Thought I had this turned on. My bad. Well, the reason why I'm telling you all this is because, like I said, this is going to be the next thing I'm going to install. And this is going to provide better range. It's going to provide a much cleaner installation into it. And it's going to help do GPS tracking, which I really love. Now, one thing that we have to do, though, or I have to do, though, is locate what I want to talk about next. Give me a second. Oh, here we go. So I was able to find on eBay a simple little GPS guide. Well, cool. Problem solved, right? Well, no. No, problem is not solved. Because right here, in a 2.5mm jack form, is the input for the GPS. That won't fit. Now, I found diagrams online about the wire layout of this, wire layout of that. So, I got a cable. It's a PS2, by the way. That's what those end connectors are, the PS2. This will be able to give me additional length so I can get this high up underneath my dash as possible. I'll be able to attach a 2.5mm jack. And you remember those little, I don't know if you saw the last video where I did the Arduino work, where I built that guy. I got these 20 volts, up to 20 volts down to like 3 volt buck converter. So what I'll do is I'll install this in line to the power to power this. That power will be turned on off with the accessory switch on the pickup truck. So this unit will boot up. I'll be able to turn the radio on and get that fired up in the truck. And lastly, I'll be able to stick the giant antenna on the roof. Also, Trevor hooked me up. I got a little speaker and put that up underneath the center dash, kind of tucked back up in there. You won't be able to see it, but you'll definitely be able to hear it. So, for tonight, I'm going to build the adapter. See if I can't get this GPS guy running. And if I can, fantastic. If I can't, well, then I have to buy a new one and try again if I fry it out. But that's going to be the first part. We're going to start cutting cable. Well, I'm not going to cut this guy. I'm going to start cutting the cable, start soldering this into place, get the buck converter set up and working, and we're going to get GPS tested out tonight. Tomorrow will be the actual install. I know. Travis, why are you doing these things at night? Well, life gets in the way. Anyways, let's do a time lapse of me building that cable. I've soldered the connectors to what I believe are the right pins for voltage for this guy. So I'm going to check my output voltage one last time to make sure I'm not exceeding 5 volts. The thing is, it's allowed to go up to 6.3, but I want to keep it at 5. Give me a little bit of headroom. And then we'll plug it in. .03 volts. All right. I'm a little nervous. Don't know if this is going to work. I mean, it should. All right. See what turns on. Honestly, I don't know where the little red blinky light's supposed to be. Oh, there. It turned on! It turned on! Yes! Alright. And it's pulling 20, between, looks like 18 and 23. It says it's supposed to pull up to 30 milliamps. So it's a little low for that, which is okay for me. All right, that works. Time to cover the wires. I'm gonna trim this down. Gonna go ahead and solder up the remaining three lines. I'm gonna have to jump off of this onto that guy. That's no big deal, I can do that. Then heat shrink tubing the whole thing, and I think I have heat shrink tubing big enough to cover this whole board, which I think is what I'm gonna do. All right, let's do it. So did you remember the part of the plan where I said I'm going to connect the ground of this pin to the ground on this unit to the ground on the buck converter? Well, guess what I forgot to do? Yeah. In fact, I don't even know if that'll end up working. I mean, it's gotta, right? This is one way to find out, right? Alright. No, things look a little different because I have to solder something to the ground here, and I didn't put on the string. I'm like, you know what? Cut it. Just redo it. It was 2 connections and some shrink tubing. Not a big deal. So, got that taken care of. Now I'm going to go ahead and get the final 3 lines connected. So, time to get to it. I'm trying to be careful because this wire is a lot more bendy than this wire. So it's going to sag right at that point where the insulation stops. So, got to be careful because it will bend and break there. And that happened to me on the last project, the controller unit. Yeah, it works. I'm just not really crazy about how much work it took. Alright, got my pieces soldered, got some of my shrink tube done. I'm probably going to just add a little dollop of hot glue right there and just wrap the rest of this up in electrical tape because, yeah, I should have gone with some thicker shrink tubing. Who would have thought that would have been the problem, huh? Like all of you. Anyways, in theory, I should be able to hook up voltage, plug this into the CB, or should be able to hook up voltage, plug this into the amateur radio, and plug this in here, and it should be able to do a GPS lock and start broadcasting the APRS GPS location. Now, I have no clue about that particular part of this to see how that works. I don't know if this needs booted up first or what. But what I am going to do is I'm going to connect it. Got a nice little red light, so that wiring still works. I'm going to hang this out my side door, see if it'll get GPS lock. Pretty sure it will. And that's going to be the best. I'm going to call it for best for tonight. I'm going to do some research on how APRS works on the radio, how to make sure that it's getting the proper GPS coordinate information from this, and then confirm that. We'll do that. I'll do that confirmation tomorrow before I start install. It's already late. It's time to kick back, unwind, have a pop or whatever I feel like drinking. Yeah, that was actually fairly easy. I mean, $3 for this cable. I think like $25 to $30 for that. I think these were $3 for the set. Then a buck converter that I bought with another project. So I'm gonna say I got GPS for this unit for $40. So yeah. Then tomorrow, you'll be, for everybody who is going to be excited to watch me tear into my truck, I'm going to be probably removing my center console, removing out the stereo, so I can mount the GPS antenna up underneath the dash, as well as the mount plate for the head unit right there in the center. After that, it'll be probably pulling out the middle seat to mount the primary unit under there. Should take me about half a day to do it, just because I don't know what I'm really tearing into. Anyways, have a great evening. See you tomorrow. So I want to apologize. I didn't intend on making this into a two-parter, but I'm going to, because we're already at 23 minutes, and yeah, I spent a whole another half a day trying to install this thing into the pickup truck. So next week, that's what we're going to be doing. So anyways, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.